Now that you've set up your brand profile, your prompts, and understood your main visibility metrics, the next step is to understand what is driving those metrics. The first step for that is understanding the sources that are being used in the prompts that you're tracking. To do that, we will first look at sources and specifically at domains. What is important to understand is that for domains, the same holds true as for our overview. You can use all of the filters that we have available in Peec across the platform. You can decide which time range you want to look at, what tags to consider, if you only want to look at branded prompts or non-branded prompts. You can decide which model is currently the most important one for you. And you can also understand, hey, which sources are most relevant in the United Kingdom or the US, as well as the different topics that you're tracking and focusing on right now. You can also look at these source data points on the domain as well as on the host level. We will stay on the domain level now and first understand what the most important domains are that are driving LLM responses within this demo Attio project. We see here that HubSpot, YouTube, Attio, TechWriter, and Folk are the most important domains for the time period of the last 14 days that we're looking at. It's relatively stable how often they are used within the LLM answers. To go a bit deeper into it and understand really the trends behind the sources that are being used by LLMs, we can first see again what are the top sources, but also what are the new sources or the new source domains that are showing up for the time frame that I'm looking at, as well as the losing domains. So what domains in the given time frame lose the most in terms of their amount of retrievals within the LLM answers that we're tracking. And then what we're also doing is classifying all of the domains that we see as sources in your prompt set. That means whenever we see a new domain, we are automatically classifying it in a set of given categories that we defined. So you can easily understand how the distribution between the domains that are showing up as sources is looking like. Are there more corporate domains, competitor domains, UGC, editorial, reference, or institutional domains? To go really in-depth and understand the domains, you want to look at the domains table. Here you see all of the domains that are showing up over the time frame, as well as much more. First, you can understand what the domain type is. You can understand what the brands are that are being mentioned on that domain. And then you can get into all of the metrics that we're showcasing for you. I'm going to explain those one by one, and we also have more in-depth explanation in our docs. First, we start with retrievals. Retrievals is showing you the absolute number of times when an LLM has found a URL of this domain, has parsed it, and has considered to use the content that it has retrieved from there. Next, we have citations. The total number of citations is the amount of times where an LLM has not only retrieved this domain, but has actually decided to cite it. A domain or URL can only be retrieved once per chat, but it can be cited multiple times per chat. So this is why you usually see a higher citation number than retrieval number. Next, we're showing you the relative number of retrievals for all of the chats that you're tracking. So in this case, it means that 20% of the chats that you're currently looking at, based on the filters that you have active, have at least one URL from HubSpot as a source within the chats. Next, we do the same for citation share, where we are not looking at the total number of chats, but we're actually looking at the total number of citations and how much of those total citations are covered by the domain that this number is associated with. So in this case, 4.7% of all citations are actually coming from HubSpot. Lastly, we have retrieval and citation rate that is giving you a better understanding about the depth and authority of a source. It shows you not only how frequently a domain is used as a source or citation, but also how frequently within the chat it is used. So if it's used only once or twice or maybe 3 or 4 times. So it's telling you a lot about the dominance of a specific domain or URL as a source. Once you identified what domains are driving AI search answers the most, you want to go into more depth. To do that, you can just click simply on the source that you're most interested in. In this case, we want to understand a bit more in depth how YouTube is supporting LLM answers. On this domain detail page, you can now see the specific URLs that are performing the best for this URL. So in the case of YouTube, we can see which videos are being used the most as a source for LLM answers. And we see the same elements that we already have on the domain page reflected here as well, understanding what the top URLs are for this domain, the new ones, the trending ones, and the losing ones. And you can also already see that we are not only classifying domains, but also specific URLs to understand what specific URLs are composing the universe of sources that LLMs are using to answer the prompts that you're tracking. In the end, you can again see a full list of all of the URLs from this domain, in this case YouTube, are showing up as sources in the LLM answers. The metrics that you can see here are the same that we also have on a domain level, but we're also showcasing you specifically if a URL is mentioning you as a brand. Before we jump into one of the YouTube URLs, let's look at all of the URLs that are relevant for the prompts that we're tracking here. For that, you can simply click on the URL tab. As I already went over this first part of this chat within the YouTube context, let's directly dive into the URLs table. Here you can now also filter for which brands are mentioned in the specific URLs that you're looking at. With this, you can very easily filter for specific mentions of your own brands, combinations of mentions of your brand within competitors, in case you want to have a better understanding how specific sources are comparing you versus your competitors. You can also very easily filter for URL types. So in this case, we know that listicles used to drive a lot of the AI visibility and a lot of brand mentions. So let's look at those. And then for the domain type, let's actually try to find listicles that we as a brand can also influence and can potentially be mentioned in. So for that, let's look at only editorial listicles. This is a very good method to find the relevant sources that you want to look at. And a good way to then go even one step further is just clicking on it. By clicking on it, you will be guided to the URL details page. On this page, we give you a more in-depth understanding of the individual metrics that we already talked about, but it also gives you a much better understanding of the diversity in the usage of sources between different LLM models. As you can see here, on a high level, this looks like a very, very important source just across all models. But if you look into it a bit more in-depth, you can see that the usage frequency for ChatGPT is much, much higher than it is for AI Overview or Gemini. So if you focusing on optimizing for ChatGPT visibility, this is a great source to focus on. If you're focusing on AI Overview or Gemini, it might be less so. Additionally, you can also see which specific prompts or which specific answers for prompts are triggering this as a source, as well as, again, understanding which brands, including yourself, are being mentioned on this source. And lastly, if you want to dive into some more examples to get a more tangible understanding how this source is used in answers, you can also click directly into some chats that are using exactly this URL as a source. In the next step, we're going to show you an even easier way to identify the URLs and domains that have the biggest potential to improve your AI visibility. So just click to the next video to find out more about the gap analysis.